Welcome to Betting with the Bag for Thursday, November 7th. It's the morning show edition. I'm Ian Cameron filling in for Jimmy the Bag on this Thursday morning. Jimmy will be back at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time later today for the late show. We have a loaded Thursday slate to break down, and we've got a potpourri of sports. It's like walking up to the buffet and seeing just a boatload of options at your disposal, and you're not sure what you want. You're not sure what you're going to choose. That looks good. That looks good too. Oh, maybe I should add that to my plate as well. That's what we feel like on a day like this, on a Thursday where we have an NFL football game and a big one on Thursday Night Football in the AFC West. A big rivalry matchup between the Raiders and Chargers. Pivotal game, pivotal point of the season for both teams as they look to get themselves back into the playoff mix in the AFC. We've got college football, 2 games on tap, a Sun Belt game, UL Lafayette, Ragin' Cajuns, Coastal Carolina, Chanticleers, and a really intriguing game in the AAC, Temple Owls against the South Florida Bulls. So looking forward to that as well tonight. We're looking at NBA in action tonight with a few games. There's some college basketball games. Now it's a very lighter card in college basketball compared to the last 2 nights, but still some college hoops on the board and a huge 11-game NHL hockey slate. So all of that going on tonight, and we'll be breaking down as much of it as we can as possible here in the next 90 minutes or so, including Teddy Covers joining me at 11:50 a.m. Eastern Time, as he always does here in this one. Welcome in everybody in the chat. Joe Anisi, Matt Randall, Eric Nisbet, Prince of the City, Word, Carlos Bobano in the house. Yes, he is. Just for this morning. Jimmy's coming back for the late show. Serious Business. JF. Welcome in, everybody. Let's see. I saw someone comment Miami, Ohio money line. Eric Nisbet, congratulations. Really, really good call on that one. Miami of O getting, I believe, a full touchdown in that game last night in action against the Ohio Bobcats. Able to get the job done. Absolutely. Jansen, yeah, Jimmy's on load management today. You're right. Jimmy is on load management today. You could say that, but we give Jimmy a pass from doing load management. He's got to know all these games, all these teams, study for these shows, doing them every day. You're an NBA player. You're getting paid millions of dollars to do your craft every day. What's your excuse for being involved in load management? But nevertheless, Paco Healy, what's up, Bobano? Welcome to you as well, Paco. Hope you enjoyed Vegas. I heard you were there with Big Ragu, Dom Ricci, with Big Boss, and Hakeem Prophet, Ski Prophet, all those guys down there. CFL talk. You know what? I will throw in some CFL talk later in the show. Maybe before Teddy arrives, I'll mention that because this is my one appearance on Betting with the Bag prior to the division semifinals in the CFL on Sunday. 2 very good division semifinals. So I'll make sure I drop some knowledge and some thoughts on that on the 2 CFL division semifinal games taking place on Sunday. Clarence Souza, good job, guys. Walla Walla Toast. Let's get it, boys and girls. Yes, let's get it indeed. Let's get to it. I mean, there's a lot to get to. I definitely want to hit hockey before Teddy arrives because Teddy does not cover hockey in his handicapping repertoire, so we want to take care of NHL before he joins us at 11:50 a.m. Eastern Time as a guest. So let's start. And I always like starting with football at this time of year. It's the kingpin sport. It's the sport most people are interested in. And we've got a big game, Thursday Night Football, NFL action tonight. It's the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Oakland Raiders. AFC West rivalry. And for once, this game is actually pretty important to both teams. We've had a lot of years where the Chargers have been good and the Raiders not so good. And the game hasn't felt like it's been as big of a football game or as important or as critical of a game. We've got a big one tonight because you've got Oakland at 4-4. You've got the LA Chargers at 4-5. You would probably have to peg the LA Chargers as one of the biggest disappointments so far this NFL football season. But they got a big win against Green Bay. Oakland rallied for a win as well last Sunday against the Detroit Lions. So you've got 2 teams feeling good, better about themselves certainly coming into this game and knowing that putting wins on the board is paramount for their playoff aspirations at this point. We've got the LA Chargers currently about 1 1.5. There's a 2 out there as well at the Jazz Sportsbook against Oakland. So, and there's been a flip of favorites. Oakland opened up a 2.5-point home favorite in this game, and now the Chargers are short road favorites in this one. Total 48.5, 49. The total's also been bumped up a little bit. It opened 47.5 and up to 48.5, 49 in most places right now. This is a intriguing game. It's a really tough game for me to handicap personally. I'm not going to be involved in this game, at least not before kickoff. There's a bunch of factors that go through my head here. One being that the LA Chargers are getting healthier. There's no denying that whatsoever. Hunter Henry's back. Melvin Ingram's back. He's now forming that pass rush duo again with Joey Bosa. And you saw what that pass rush duo was capable of doing last Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. They absolutely shut down Aaron Rodgers and a very good Green Bay offense that had been moving the football quite well most of the season. Not every game. You know, Green Bay had a couple times this year where they had an off game, but the Chargers completely disrupted the Green Bay offensive line, blew up the line of scrimmage, won that battle in the trenches, and Aaron Rodgers was just scrambling out of trouble, trying to get out of Dodge most of that football game, and the Chargers defense just had an absolute tremendous performance in that game. Now, I keep thinking back to after that game, where it's looking like, wow, that was a dominant win for the LA Chargers. And it certainly was. You can't take anything away from them. It's probably their best and most complete game of the season for a team that's, you know, found ways to lose in heartbreaking fashion. We think about Melvin Gordon fumbling on the goal line to lose that game against Tennessee. We think about, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers rolling into town with a win against them with Devlin Hodges, the third-string quarterback, going in there and winning that football game. There's a lot of situations that make you think, boy, the Chargers with a couple of better performances in some of these games, and maybe a little break or two, they're not what their 4-5 record currently suggests. However, I keep thinking back to what Aaron Rodgers said after the game Sunday when Green Bay lost to the Chargers, saying we needed a piece of humble pie, we needed to eat it. I think we're starting to read the headlines, get a little too overconfident. And when I hear people use those kind of quotes, and Aaron Rodgers say stuff like, oh, we ate our piece of humble pie, oh, we were overconfident, it tells me a team was flat going into that game. So that is why I'm a little bit not willing to chalk that up completely to, oh, the LA Chargers are back, baby. They're all of a sudden looking to, look like the team that they were last year going to the AFC divisional round, and the team that, you know, we were expecting would be one of the top teams, you know, competing with Kansas City in this division when the season began. We need to slow down a little bit, because I think part of the story last Sunday against the Packers was the Packers did not play well. They didn't look like they were mentally geared in. You're right, flat was the predominant word that a couple of Packer players used to describe that team's performance on Sunday. So the question now is, where does the credit lie in your own opinion? I know where it lies in my opinion. I don't know yet. I don't know if it's more the Chargers were amazing on Sunday or Green Bay was terrible and flat and maybe a little overrated and a little overvalued going into that game. Where do you stand in that argument? Where do you stand in that debate? That's probably going to end up being the way you bet this football game tonight. If you think the Chargers are back, you think the Chargers now, and I'll say this about the Chargers, they're a lot healthier now. There's no question. I mean, Hunter Henry makes a difference being back in that offense. He's a great tight end. If only he can stay healthy, it's going to make a world of difference for this football team. Obviously, Melvin Ingram on the field again definitely helps them. Say what you will about Melvin Gordon, who's really had a tough time assimilating himself back into the mix and into the picture in the running back spot. You know, Austin Eckler's been so good for the Chargers most of the season. It's been a tough sledding for Melvin Gordon. He sat out so long. He was not effective in his first few games. Everyone remembers the fumble he had to lose the game against Tennessee a few weeks ago. But finally, he had a better performance last week against Green Bay. Maybe it's his opportunity to shine. Maybe it's his opportunity last week showing that, hey, I'm back. I'm Melvin Gordon. This is the kind of performance that warranted me wanting to hold out for the money I was hoping for. Not that he deserved it anyway, because I still don't think he did. And Eckler's performance has shown that so far this season. But I'm telling you right now, that was definitely Melvin Gordon's best game of the season. So there are things working in the Chargers' favor. They're getting healthier. They finally had a great game. But again, how much of that was them and how much of it was Green Bay being lousy on Sunday? That's the question. And I'm not willing to sell Oakland short. You know, Oakland, let's give them credit. Let's give them credit. Let's give John Gruden credit. We thought this team would be absolute garbage. Who would have known November 7th, 2019, about the midway point of the NFL season right now, the Oakland Raiders would look more cohesive, more coherent, and more stable than the Cleveland Browns? Who would have imagined that coming into the season? Everybody talking up the Cleveland Browns as this big-time player. This has got to be the season where they finally show that they're contenders, not pretenders. And everybody just bashing Oakland coming into the season. We saw the Antonio Brown circus play out in the offseason, saying, oh, the same old clown show Oakland Raiders. Well, the clown show Oakland Raiders, the clown show's left town for a little bit. The clown show has left town for a little bit. This has been a decent football team this year. They've been solid, and I know it's only a 4-4 record for Oakland, but I've been impressed with them in a lot of games more than I haven't. They could have beat the Houston Texans. They only lost that game 27-24. They lost to Green Bay at Lambeau. There's no real shame in that. And that was a brutal spot, too. That was right in the middle of that long, extended road trip, too, for Oakland. They beat Indy. Okay, they lost to Minnesota. They don't have too many bad losses on their resume. Their losses were to Kansas City, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Houston. Kansas City, Minnesota, Green Bay. There's a good chance all four of those teams are playoff teams, in January. Damn good chance. They probably will all be playoff teams in January this year. Those are the four losses for the Oakland Raiders. So when you look at that so far here this season, not a bad loss on Oakland's resume yet. So you give Derek Carr credit. He's finding his receivers down the field. He's doing a great job getting the ball out of his hands. His three straight games where he's had a passer rating above 116. Five touchdowns, no interceptions in the past two games for Derek Carr. He's playing well. And the offensive line is protecting for him. That's worth mentioning. They're run blocking very well as well, this Oakland Raiders team. Doing a great job opening up holes for the ground game and for Josh Jacobs. And it's been fun to watch this Oakland offense really develop throughout the course of the season. And so one thing John Gruden does have the ability to do, he can be solid in terms of putting an offense together when it's working. He sometimes runs the football too much for my liking. He's still a little bit one of those old school dinosaur guys at times where if it's 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 5, we'll still run the football sometimes to get the first down instead of throw for it. He still does that, and it drives me nuts sometimes when I see that. But overall, he's gotten a decent amount from this offense, and they're going to be tested by the Chargers because the Chargers defense is as healthy as they've been all season. They're coming off a tremendous performance against the Green Bay Packers last week. So the question's going to be, can this Oakland offense? Now, Oakland offense shredded the Detroit Lions, but Detroit Lions defense I don't think is as good as the Charger defense. So let's see what they're able to do tonight. Obviously, Jacobs running the ball. You're going to have to hope you can get a good, solid production out of him running the ball. Chargers defense this year giving up 114 yards per game on the ground, 4.2 yards per carry. So not bad. They've actually been pretty solid against the run, this LA Chargers team. So there might be a little bit more onus on Derek Carr having to find Tyrell Williams. How about Hunter Renfrow? Had a great game. Clemson, of course, won a national title with Deshaun Watson there a few years ago. Played a great game last week against the Detroit Lions at the receiving position for Oakland. Made a couple of really nice catches in that game for Derek Carr. And Darren Waller has really shown himself as a really good tight end as well for the Oakland Raiders. They've gone to him a lot in recent games, and he's been able to make some big plays for them down the field for this Oakland offense. So it's a really intriguing game. I'm not selling Oakland short. When your 4 losses are all the playoff-bound teams, you're having a decent season, and there's certainly a better season than I envisioned Oakland having. And I don't know what to do with the Chargers just yet. I know they're as healthy as they've been all season, and that's a good sign. With Hunter Henry back, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, a great receiving duo. And don't forget, they've got a couple other receivers that have been injured for a while, Inman and Benjamin too, but they've still got receivers that they can throw to, Allen and Williams. Gordon and Eckler now, you've got a dual running back set that you can rely on. Phillip Rivers finally, didn't make some mistakes that he's been making at times throughout the season. They have their kicker back, Michael Badgley. Let's not forget that. Kicking issues have always been a problem for years with this Chargers team. And then finally they get Michael Badgley back, so that's going to help this team. So it's a tricky game for me to handicap overall. It is. I mean, it just is. We'll see what the chat. I'm passing. I'm going to make that official right now. I had to lean to the over, but it's 48.5, 49, and I'm convinced this Oakland offense is going to have a more difficult time moving the football tonight against the Chargers than they did against Detroit. This is a step up in class against the Charger defense, especially that the Charger defense has the pass rush healthy and intact with your two bookend pass rushers, Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa back again and healthy again. So that's going to be a much taller order for the Oakland Raiders offense here in this game. And again, primetime game under. Now, the primetime game unders, they haven't done as well lately. You look at it. San Francisco, Arizona, actually 3 straight last week, guys. 3 straight primetime NFL overs last week. San Fran, Arizona went over the total. New England, Baltimore went over the total Sunday night. And a little lucky, more than a little lucky, bad beat if you had the under in the Cowboys-Giants game Monday night, but still went over the total, the Cowboys-Giants game. So all of a sudden, that primetime under streak, which was cashing at an insane clip, is starting to come back down to earth a little bit, moving into this game tonight. So to me, it's a conflict game. It's over or under, I could see both ways. Chargers, Raiders, I could see both ways. So it's a pass for me. Let's see what the chat's saying here in about this Oakland game. Alex Ramirez likes Oakland. Cobra Sports likes the Raiders to win this game. Paco Healy. Let me see here. Both teams are currently auditioning for future season ticket holders. Well, you know what? They're still. Don't tell them that going into tonight. These are teams that are 4-4, 4-5 respectively. They think they can still end up making the playoffs, and they'll certainly be bolstered if they win tonight. I don't want to say this is an elimination game for these two teams tonight, but it's a pretty big loss. It's a pretty detrimental loss for both teams if they lose tonight. Yeah, offensive line issues. Matt Randall, great point. Rodney Hudson, the center, starting center on the O-line for the Oakland Raiders. I don't know if they for sure won't play. Every report that I've read yesterday, this morning, getting ready for this show, says questionable when it comes to Rodney Hudson. Trent Brown, the tackle as well, who left the last game against Detroit. He's questionable as well. So those are concerns definitely for this Oakland Raiders team. And again, I've talked myself out of the over already. I'd actually probably look under the total if I see that there's cluster injuries on the O-line. And I think that might even push the edge toward the Chargers. You think of that pass rush going up against a depleted offensive line tonight, if indeed Hudson doesn't play and if indeed the tackle Trent Brown doesn't play, that is going to be a significant disadvantage for the Raiders because they're going up against a front that can flat out get after it. If they show you anything close to what they showed you last week against Green Bay, where that defensive line was completely disrupting the line of scrimmage throughout that football game. And now they might have the chance to do it with 2 starting offensive linemen potentially down and out for this game here for the Oakland Raiders. So that's an injury worth monitoring here because that might push the Chargers into a look that I might consider if I see that one or both of those two guys, Hudson and Brown, don't play tonight here for the Oakland Raiders. The question is, do they have the depth? Yu Chang, Raiders have best O-line in the league, believe that. They do have a really good offensive line. When they're fully healthy, they've proven now that they're a very good offensive line. There's no question about that. So we'll see what these injury situations are like. Certainly, if these 2 injuries show tonight that they're not going to play, the starting center and the tackle for the Raiders, Brown and Hudson, that's going to push me toward a lean toward the Chargers and the under in this game. Even though, again, Chargers, I'm still a little bit hesitant on them because I think part of the story last Sunday was Green Bay being pretty poor in that game, not so much what the Chargers did. Tonight's going to be the proving ground. If the Chargers win this game and win it impressively, let's say they win by 7 or 10 points or 2 touchdowns, I think it's safe to say the Chargers are going to start looking dangerous again potentially and maybe have a chance to get hot, get on a roll, and now that they're healthier, maybe get back into the race here in terms of the AFC playoff picture. All right, so that was a very thorough breakdown of the Chargers-Raiders game. Let's move on now to college football. 2 games on tap there. We've got UL Lafayette, Coastal Carolina. UL Lafayette's taken the money here. Opened 11.5 as road favorites, up to 14 in this game. Total 57.5, 58 across the board. You're not going to get me backing a pitiful, pitiful defense, and unfortunately, Coastal Carolina has a pitiful, pitiful defense. They really do. I mean, they were absolutely shelled by Troy last week. I mean, just a really, really bad defensive game from them. That's a concern for me going up against what's still a very balanced, potent, very capable UL Lafayette Raging Cajun offense. And Coastal Carolina, they've had their share of issues this year. They've had some games where the final score hasn't truly been indicative of the effort. Where Coastal Carolina, the final score looks closer, but they've been just crushed on the box score and in the total yardage department. That's definitely a concern. But UL Lafayette has absolutely been tremendous. 7-1 against the spread. If you've been riding this team week in and week out, you've been cashing your ticket pretty much every single time this year. Coastal, fortunate to beat Troy, even though they gave up a lot of points in that game against the Trojans. To me, I think UL Lafayette will move the football up and down at will in this game. I like the Lafayette offense to be able to have success moving the football here in this game against the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. Now, it is, laying road points of this magnitude, talking 2-touchdown favorite, on the road on a weeknight game. And for Coastal Carolina, when's the last time Coastal Carolina has had a home national TV game? This is an ESPNU game. It's been a while. And they'll be fired up for that. I'm not going to fired up only gets you so far. You still got to prove you can match up with the other team. I'm not convinced Coastal can. That's not enough of a reason for me to want to back Coastal, but it does give me a little bit of pause to want to lay 14 with Lafayette. I would lean to the road favorite here, but it's just not a game I've got a really, really strong feel for. A total 57.5. We saw it with Troy Coastal Carolina last week. That's not a team I'm betting under the total right now, Coastal Carolina. And the one thing about Chadwell, the head coach, of course, of this Coastal Carolina team, is he's a pretty decent offensive play caller. He was the offensive coordinator when Joe Moglia was the coach there at Coastal Carolina. He retired in the offseason due to health issues, so Jamie Chadwick's taken over as the offensive coordinator. He's not a bad play caller. He can scheme up an offense that I think this offense for Coastal Carolina is not – it's not a great quarterback. It's not the best offensive line you could ask for. It's not a boatload of skill position weapons on this team, but I think it's a good scheme, and they're well prepared offensively because of the head coach, who I think is a decent play caller for Coastal Carolina. The one issue is Coastal Carolina doesn't push pace, and that's the problem with betting overs in their games. It worked out last week. Game still went over, but it's still a situation where UL Lafayette's got a pretty good defense, and I'm willing to say UL Lafayette's defense is better than Troy's. I know Coastal Carolina moved the ball against Troy. It's not going to be as easy here against Lafayette. So this is one of those games where I can't bet Coastal under, but this is a step up in class offensively for them against a Lafayette defense that's been capable. Let's not forget, Lafayette, when they played App State earlier this season, they kept App State under wraps. No, App State won that game, but it's not like their offense, and that's one of the top offenses in the Sun Belt Conference. They kept them under wraps. They kept them from exploding on the scoreboard. It's definitely a situation where, if they could keep App State, to 20 points or so, the Coastal Carolina could scuffle to move the ball here. So, again, I'd lean to the favorite of the over, but I'm passing on this game. I'm not passing on the next game, AAC action, Temple Owls, South Florida Bulls. We've got Temple 1.5-point road favorites here. The total 49.5. That's come down a little bit from the opener of 53.5 in this game. And when you look at this football game and you analyze it, and you start to really dissect the two teams, there's this line is stunningly short, in my opinion, toward Temple. Stunningly short. Like, I actually thought Temple would be at least 3.5 in this game, yet they've been 1.5, maybe 2 in some spots pretty much this entire week, and the line has not budged. The line is absolutely not budged here in this game, and it's peculiar to me. It makes me think, what's going on here? Why has this line been constant when I think Temple is the clear superior squad going into this matchup? I don't think it's even an issue. I mean, you look at South Florida and their results so far this year. First of all, their defense is awful. I don't like South Florida's defense at all. You look at the teams they've beaten. Here's the victories for South Florida this season. They beat South Carolina State out of the FCS. FCS team. They beat UConn, bottom feeder. They beat East Carolina, bottom feeder. And they beat BYU in a game where Wilson, the quarterback for BYU, was injured, didn't play. And it's worth noting USF won that game in spite of being minus 124 in total yards in that game. So it was a misleading final score. BYU turned it over a bunch. South Florida got short fields because of it. It's not like the Bulls moved the football up and down the field against that BYU defense. It tells, and I don't like this team at all. I don't like the coach at all. I'm not a big Rod Carey guy either. Rod Carey's got some issues too from a coaching standpoint, but I'm still going to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt over Charlie Strong. This is a team I've already faded successfully a couple of times this year, South Florida. They haven't beaten anybody good. They haven't. And the BYU win, you could say, oh, that was a good win. Well, it was fraudulent. They got outgained by 124 yards. BYU didn't have their number one quarterback that day. I don't like the quarterback switcheroo that they got going on. I know they replaced Barnett. They've got the other guy playing at quarterback now for South Florida. Name escapes me, but he's been playing the last several games. Temple on the road is a concern. You know, they have been not so good on the road, but you start to look at strength of schedule. Temple's faced a much tougher strength of schedule, especially here in conference. You look at Temple, UCF, SMU, Memphis, the last three opponents for this Temple team. So, yeah, their defensive numbers look awful in those three games. Well, they're going to look awful when you're playing Shane Buechele and the SMU offense. You're playing Brady White and the Memphis offense, and you're playing Dylan Gabriel and the UCF offense. What do you expect is going to happen? You know, you're going to give up points. Nobody's shutting those teams down. They're potent offenses. They're the three best offenses in this AAC conference right now. I'm on Temple here. I don't buy into trap lines. I don't buy into this smells fishy. I'm not into rats. I'm not into fishes, and I'm not into mice. You know, when it comes to evaluating a betting line, you know, I'm into seeing that Temple's the better of these two teams here, and to me, this is a cheap number. You know, South Florida to me has got flaws all over the place. We saw them quit multiple times when they get down in a football game. I don't trust them here. They faced a weak, light, just cupcake schedule compared to Temple so far this season. Let's not forget, Temple, there's one team that's beaten Memphis this year. That was Temple. Temple beat Memphis. That's the team that beat Memphis this year. You know, they beat I know Maryland's, you know, not proven to who we thought they would be. They've fallen on hard times, but Temple handed Maryland their first loss of the season. So, yeah, I know I get your fear and your trepidation in the chat because I see this line doesn't look right, doesn't smell right. I get that to a certain degree, but I'm on Temple here. I am. There's no justification for me to trust South Florida here. I think Temple's got the better defense. I know Anthony Russo's not a phenomenal quarterback by any stretch, but I think I'll take him over any of the South Florida quarterbacks. So definitely Temple is a bet for me here. Official play on them. I took the money line though, minus 120 on the money line. I'm always looking at a situation where it's a better price on the Owls with the money line. When you're talking about these favorites of less than a field goal, I usually just buy the money line price and go with that instead. So I'm on Temple here in this game. Donnie, welcome in. Donnie, right side in the chat. Good to see him. It's a great chat this morning. We've got DJ Big Boss in here, Ron Crawford, Shelby Richards saying Calgary, Canucks, Islanders, Knights, Flyers, Panthers, all looks. Boy, I'll tell you what, if you like the Panthers, that's going against a red-hot Washington team right now, but I get it. Washington's not going to win forever. I don't disagree with a lot of those, to be honest with you. Maybe a slight disagreement with Calgary laying that price against New Jersey might have a winning streak in them. They got a nice win against Winnipeg. They finally won a few games in a row. Maybe they can get on a roll. They've underachieved badly. We'll get to hockey in just a second, Shelby, but I agree with a lot. I like the Islanders. I like I definitely like the Canucks against Chicago. Vancouver off a loss has been very, very good in their recent games. So I'm looking at Vancouver and a bounce back after a tough overtime loss. They give up that 3-0 rush to the St. Louis Blues. Just when you think you've seen it all, you see that. 3-0 rush for the St. Louis Blues in overtime. Never, ever have I seen that before. And they win that game in overtime on that 3-0 rush. Donnie, thank you for the kind words. Versatile host. I try to be fill in, come out of the bullpen for Jimmy whenever he needs me, and this morning was one of those days. I'll be filling in for Jimmy next Thursday morning as well. It's the next 2 Thursday mornings I will be hosting this show. Matt Randall says lean Seattle plus 3.5 and Air Force minus 15 in tonight's college hoops action taking place. We'll get to college hoops briefly. I'm going to rely on you guys in the chat for college basketball because, to be honest with you, I looked over the card. I handicap college basketball. Like, I know what's going on. I know the teams, the coaches, and all that, but I haven't made a bet today. I don't like this card at all. It's a short card. I was kind of tempted by Rutgers a little bit, laying 20.5 against Bryant, because we saw just a couple days ago another team from that Northeast Conference, Wagner. They played Seton Hall. They couldn't hang with Seton Hall. They got destroyed. They got ambushed, and I was on Seton Hall in that game, laying 27 against Wagner. They won that game by 30-some points. It ended up being. I don't trust Bryant to hang. I like that. Rutgers is one of those teams in college basketball this year. It's kind of like the football team. They're going to be able to beat up on teams in non-conference play. It's when they step up in class against, in Rutgers' case, Big Ten play. That's where the struggles are probably going to happen a little bit for that basketball team. But I think Steve Peichel, let's be honest, Rutgers basketball is leaps and bounds ahead of Rutgers football right now. I think Steve Peichel is actually a decent coach there for Rutgers basketball. I think he's doing as good a job as he can, trying to get that program back a little bit. So to me, that was as close as I got to pulling the trigger on something tonight in college basketball. Was Rutgers minus 20.5 against Bryant in that one. But that's just a lean for me right now. I'm passing on that. It's a short card. There's a great card tomorrow. I wish the Friday college basketball card was taking place today, because I'd have definitely some opinions on that Friday card. There's already some teams I've circled. There's already some games I've circled on that Friday card tomorrow, so looking forward to that. But today, other than a lean to Rutgers, 20.5 point home favorites against Bryant, I don't have too much on the college basketball slate. So let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Taint play of the day, Winthrop, -1. We need to pay anyone in the chat, the Taint play of the day. Matt, you know the record. I don't, but I know it's pretty good record overall. Long-term record, you've done well with those. A far better team. Hartford only returning 8% of minutes last year. Way to go, Matt. Way to go for recognizing that's a stat you need to be paying attention to in the first week of the college basketball season. Returning percentage of minutes back from last year. You need to be paying attention to that, especially if you get the combination of that and a new coach, new style of play. You get the three-headed monster in that regard. Low percentage of returning starter minutes, new coach, new schemes going into play. They're going from up tempo to slower tempo. They're going from half court to full court, or full court to half court. In terms of their execution offensively. Those are the teams that are dead bet against teams. They got to learn a new coach, new style, and with not much returning personnel, those are the teams you just fade, the first week of the season. And they won't always cash, but they'll cash more often than not. You'll be profitable with backing teams like that, or going against, I should say, teams like that. That's definitely a stat you need to be paying attention to in college hoops the first several days, upwards of a week into the season, is those returning percentage of starters minutes, because if you've got nothing but fresh faces, you're going to struggle probably more often than not in that first game, unless you're Mike Young in Virginia Tech and you're facing a buffoon coach on the other side like Brad Brownell. Other than that, that's the only scenario and case where that doesn't work. Apparently, we found that out the other day. How did Clemson lose that game? I mean, that's inexcusable for Brad Brownell and that Clemson team. I'm sorry. You had a lot of more returning experience back, a lot more cohesion. Everybody left Virginia Tech basketball, that team last year, after Buzz Williams left for the A&M job. Mike Young is a great coach, did an amazing job at Wofford, but he had everybody starting over, new faces. They lost. You look at the Virginia Tech roster that night against Clemson 2 nights ago. There was nobody from last year's team that was leading them in points, leading them in rebounds, leading them in assists, leading them in amount of floor time per game. It was basically a roster starting from scratch, and they went into Clemson. They won outright as a 7-point underdog, and Clemson took all the money in that game. They opened like 4-point favorites, and they closed at 7. So that's the one instance where you go against the team, new coach with a completely new roster, didn't work out, and definitely that is a black eye on Clemson and Brad Brownell the other night. A guy, and I'm not the only person that shares that opinion of Brad Brownell. I think he's a horrible coach, hasn't done anything with this Clemson program. They've lost every big game that he's been coaching them. And again, bad loss for them that opening night. So other than Rutgers minus 20.5, we know Matt likes Winthrop against Hartford, better team, liking them in that game. Ben Sports played was Tech upset Clemson. Mally Mal, a great call by Ben Sports. If he liked Virginia Tech plus points and bet them, good for him. I was leaning that way. I said it on Twitter. There's no freaking way I'm laying the points with Clemson here. There's no way. I don't trust them, even against a team starting over from scratch. I think the coaching edge was significant in that game, and it proved to play out that way on the court. Mike Young's just a better basketball head coach than Brad Brownell, period. And we saw that, and that's exactly how Virginia Tech was able to get that win the other night. So, again, I wish I could give you more on this college basketball card. I know Maxwell Smart likes the under in Seattle and Washington State, and I think he likes the under in Winthrop and Hartford, if I'm not mistaken. And Matt Randall liking the team play. It's worth noting, though, Winthrop now laying 3.5 in that game against the Hartford Hawks. So make sure you're aware of that. That line's moved up 2.5 points. It's now 3.5 with Winthrop as road favorites in that game. We got Bob Morris against Marshall. I like calling him Bob Morris against Marshall. Marshall 9.5 point home favorites, total 150 in that game. Marshall team, I like that team. I don't know if I want only 9.5 with them in this spot, but definitely like that team. And, Presbyterian, speaking of Clemson, they're on the board tonight against Presbyterian, the Pale Hose, as they call them. 18.5, 19-point home favorites, total 139.5 in this game tonight. I'm not laying 19 with Clemson. I know that right now. I don't know if I trust Presbyterian, but that's another situation where Presbyterian plus the points is the only way I'd bet. That Clemson team, woof, the other night against Virginia Tech, and I don't trust them laying that number to anybody right now. I know they've got athleticism, depth, athlete edges, obviously much higher quality of players on the court than Presbyterian, but that's not a team or a coach I'm laying 19 points with. So maybe a lean to Presbyterian. Lean Presbyterian and Rutgers for me tonight on the college basketball card. All right, we've got about 12 minutes until Teddy Covers joins the show at 11:50 a.m. Eastern Time. So we're going to hit the ice. We're going to lace up the skates right now, talk NHL hockey. We've got 11 games on the NHL slate tonight. We're going to go rapid fire through these. We'll save NBA discussion for Teddy Covers when he joins the show in about 12 minutes from now. Montreal, Philadelphia, we've got the Flyers minus 120, home favorites, total 6.5, shaded to the over here, minus 115 in this game. What a crazy game Montreal was in the other night, come from behind win against the Boston Bruins. Great game that was, crazy game, back and forth it went. And a nice win for the Montreal Canadiens. Really starting to play some better hockey here. Philadelphia, on the other hand, I was impressed the other night with the win against Carolina. 4-1 was by far Carter Hart, one of his better games in net for the Philadelphia Flyers in quite some time. It was a much needed. This guy needed a good game in between the pipes. He finally got one for Philadelphia. Philadelphia is really starting to play well, and if you look at some of the losses, guys, that the Flyers have had this year, they should have won some of those games. Some of those games they lost, they outplayed the opponent. They ran into a hot goalie. They weren't finishing their chances. They hit some posts, and unfortunately, they weren't able to get the job done in those games, despite playing well enough to win. So I don't think their record is as bad as it looks. They've played better lately. They've played a lot more consistency. Again, they finally got a good game from their goaltending, which has been spotty at times this year from both Hart and Elliott. Hart was really good last time. These are two teams I'd rather bet on than bet against right now. Montreal's in good form. Philly's in good form. I'm not involved in this game. I've been betting some Philly overs lately, but I lost with Philly over against Carolina the other night because they finally got goaltending. And if Carter Hart brings that game again today, 6.5 might be a lofty total to go over with in that one. Vegas and Toronto, we've got Toronto minus 135, total 6.5, shaded to the under in this game. Maybe a lean to the under in this game, just because Mike Babcock was saying, they won 3-1 against LA the other night. It was an ugly game. It was a defensive-minded game. It was a tighter checking style of hockey game there. One of these and Mike Babcock said after the game, I kind of like that we won this kind of game. It was a tighter defensive game. There wasn't, LA wasn't giving up many quality chances. We weren't giving up many quality chances. So, Mike Babcock was sort of hinting that if we have to win some low-scoring games, we don't mind that. Of course, John Tavares comes back from injury in that last game for the Leafs. Certainly going to help. They're waiting for Zach Hyman to return, which should be any day for this Leafs team. Certainly going to bolster them. Really, he's been missed all season long because he's a guy that's actually a really tenacious on the forecheck, physical presence. He opens up space for his line mates. I think that's kind of the reason why Mitch Marner hasn't had the best start to the season. Maybe because his wallet's fat now. The incentive has gone away. But I think not having Zach Hyman out there on the ice definitely has hurt his production a little bit. Question is, can Toronto step up in class? That's what this handicap comes down to, because they've struggled to be consistent. They've struggled to get on a roll, and their last 2 wins, to give them credit, they have won 2 in a row, but they came against LA and Philadelphia. Vegas is a much better team than those 2 teams. Let's see if the Leafs are ready to put up or shut up, get the job done, get a win against a quality foe. Wins against quality teams have been few and far between for the Toronto Maple Leafs so far this season. So this is one of those proving ground games for the Leafs. Are they able to get it done? We saw Vegas start their road trip on the right foot the other night. They got Nate Schmidt back on the blue line. That certainly helps them. I was kind of interested in the Leafs, actually. I do think now that if this team is going to get on a run, it starts now. They've got a lot of home games now coming up, a much more manageable schedule, because I will say this about the Leafs. They had a lot of road games, pretty tough schedule early in the season that they had to work through. So it's going to lighten up. But again, Vegas is a pretty good hockey team, and Toronto has had trouble beating teams of this caliber so far this season. So it's a game I'm passing on. I would lean to the under a little bit, though. 6.5 minus 120. Pittsburgh and the New York Islanders. We've got the Islanders minus 110, 6 shaded to the under in terms of the total. I'm going to ride the hot team here, the New York Islanders. I think it's an absolute bargain price. Team that's 7-2 at home this year. A team that's won 10 straight games. And I've watched a lot of this Islanders team play quite a bit. I'm looking at Adam Booth, my NHL Play of the Day colleague, likes them. I can't argue with that. My philosophy when a team's on a win streak like this, I either bet the team on the win streak or I pass the game. I don't look to say step in front of the streak. I don't look to step in front of the hot team and say this is the spot where they lose. And I know people are going to say playoff revenge for Pittsburgh because they lost to the Islanders last year. Islanders just swept them away in 4 straight games. I understand all of that. But the Islanders play structured, sound, defensive hockey nightly. They're not making it easy on their opponent. I like the way they're playing right now. With absolutely phenomenal in the back end. It does hurt a little bit that Nick Leddy's injured now. But they've had guys like Scott Mayfield, Devon Taves, Ryan Pulak, Adam Pelech. Johnny Boychuk's been good. Noah Dobson stepped up and really been good on that blue line for the Islanders of late as well. Even their offense has been better lately. They've started to get some of their depth guys scoring. Brock Nelson's hit the score sheet. Derek Brassard, Bailey, Barzal, Lee. This is an Islanders team that's playing with great confidence. Won't be easy against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's as healthy as they've been all season. They finally have Rust, Malkin, Bukestad, Galchenyuk. All those injured forwards that were out early in the season are back now for this Penguins team. But they've won 10 in a row. They should be priced more than this. When you're a team that's on a 10-game win streak and you're 7-2 at home, why are you only minus 110? To me, the value in the price is on the Islanders. They're playing good. They've matched up well with the Penguins. They went 2-2 in the regular season last year against Pittsburgh, and of course swept them in 4 straight in the playoffs. So that now makes them 6-2 the last 8 meetings against Pittsburgh. Yeah, I like the Islanders here, minus 110. I am on them here in this one. Rangers, Carolina minus 260, 6.5 the total. I certainly lean over the total here. The Rangers are a hideous defensive team, but they're still capable of finding the back of the net. Carolina got shut down last game against Philadelphia, but they had chances. They ran into a hot goalie. I can't say any of the Ranger goalies are hot right now. Lundqvist, has been up and down. Georgiev got shelled in his last start for the New York Rangers earlier this week against Ottawa. There's probably, I would think, there's a chance we'll see Georgiev in net tonight because the Rangers are on the second night of back-to-back, and it was Lundqvist in net for them last night in that game. Let me get the starting goalies that are up here for this one. No confirmed goalie yet here for the New York Rangers in this game. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. But I'm still going to lean over the total here. In fact, I'll probably make that one official as well. Rangers, a team that I had pegged as an over team coming into the season. I don't think that changes here. Washington, Florida, in terms of totals and overs specifically, this is probably my favorite over tonight on the card. We talked about Washington before on this show when I've hosted. They're scoring goals for fun, which is a term that Alex, our soccer colleague here at SBR, likes to use. Washington scoring goals for fun. They're scoring 5-on-5. Their power play's been phenomenal. And I don't see Florida shutting them down. Florida's defense has been, suspect, to say the least. And Sergei Bobrovsky, his numbers don't look good, but I think it's more of a product of the defense not really playing all that consistent and spectacular in front of him. Washington's playing great, finding ways to win. Their offense is lighting it up. I think Florida, though, can find the back of the net because Washington still had at times given up some goals themselves as well. Florida's power play has connected and really played well in recent games. We know Washington's power play long-term has been great. Washington's 10-1 to the over in their last 11 games coming into tonight. These teams played each other 3 times last season, the Capitals and Panthers. Each game was lined at 6.5 with the total, and all 3 of those games went over the total. I think we get more of the same here. You had 6-5, 5-4 games. You had some really high-scoring affairs last year. Washington and Florida. Ride that streak. That's the way I do it, whether it's a side streak, whether it's a total streak. We ride those streaks. That's exactly what we're doing tonight with the Capitals and Panthers. My favorite over tonight in this game, Capitals and Panthers over 6.5. minus 120. I thought this could have been 7. I was fully expecting it to be 7 with the way Washington scored goals, with the way Florida has scored goals, and with the way, both of these teams, particularly Florida, have given up goals at times this year. So surprised to see 6.5 here. We'll take advantage of that because, again, I think both these teams can get to 3 goals. If they do, you cash your ticket. LA, Ottawa. We've got LA minus 120 to minus 125, 6.5 the total. We've got to go rapid fire through these last 6 games. We've got Teddy on the way in a couple minutes. I'm passing on this game. There's no way I'm laying a price with LA. I said that weeks ago. I'm not ever going to back the Kings as a favorite. I'm just not going to do it. I would actually lean Ottawa in this game. Ottawa, third game in 4 nights. They won against the Rangers. Tough spot back-to-back, losing to the Islanders earlier this week. But there's no way I'm laying with the LA Kings as a favorite. It's just not something I'm looking to do. They've not necessarily been very good the few times they have been favored this season. We know defensively and Jonathan Quick, not that same shutdown team that they were when they were in their heyday winning Stanley Cups under Daryl Sutter. Not that same Kings team anymore. Offensively, things have been a little bit harder to come by. Maybe a lean to the under in that game and a lean to Ottawa as well. But I'm gonna stay out of that game and pass overall. But I would lean Ottawa and the under there. Vancouver and Chicago. Vancouver minus 130, 6.5 shaded to the under. The total 6 is still out there. Bookmaker Chris. I like the over and I like Vancouver in this game. Bounce back spot. Chicago is in a world of hurt right now. An embarrassing loss for them against San Jose. Not just that they lost, but more how they lost. They got totally outshot. I think they had 6 shots halfway through the game at one point against San Jose on Sunday night. Terrible performance. The defensive play really hasn't improved all that much. Vancouver off a loss is something I'm interested in. Of course, they lost in overtime, that crazy 3-on-0 rush goal by the Blues, beating Vancouver the other night. Vancouver hasn't lost 2 in a row since way back early in the season. They've been good off a loss. They've been a good bounce-back team after a defeat. They're better than Chicago. It's a more than reasonable price here, minus 130 in that range to back the Canucks as road chalk. And the over. I grabbed the 6 that's out there at minus 120 to the over at Bookmaker Chris. It's been an over series. I think something like 8-1-1 to the over. The last 10 head-to-head meetings between Vancouver and Chicago. There's been a lot of high-scoring games. I would expect that to continue tonight. So definitely looking at Vancouver and the over against Chicago. A couple people in the chat liking Ottawa. Ottawa or nada, I agree, Shelby. No way backing quick. Ron Crawford, I agree. It's Ottawa. I can't bet the whole board. Don't want to bet every game. Can't bet every game. You don't win that way. But I would lean Ottawa in the under there if I had to. Nashville, Colorado. Nashville minus 130. The total 6 across the board. I don't want to back Colorado right now. They're in a big funk right now without Landeskog and Rantanen. It's definitely hurt them not having those guys back. Due to injury, and even Colin Wilson, an underrated forward. They've had real struggles finding the back of the net. Offensively, this team has completely cooled off. It's hard to explain because I thought they would have had the depth to be able to still put the puck in the net. It just hasn't happened for them yet. Nashville, on the road here, minus 130 in this game. Don't love the price. I was actually thinking this would be pick'em, even with Colorado struggling, even with Landeskog and Rantanen not playing. I thought this would be closer to even money. But Nashville opened minus 120, and then the price got pushed up to minus 130 on top of that. So it's been priced out of the equation for me. I don't want to back Colorado, but I don't want to necessarily lay at this kind of price with Nashville. I think the Preds probably will find a way to win the game, but I think there's better prices, value spots, and opportunities on this card than that. New Jersey, Calgary, minus 155. Calgary home favorites, total 6.5. Let's give the Devils credit. They had a great defensive game against Winnipeg, one of their best of the season. They found a way to finally win a low-scoring, tight-checking game, 2-1 in a shootout the other night against Winnipeg. I like New Jersey here, plus 135. This team is badly underachieved so far this season. There's no question they've been one of the biggest flops, but they finally won a few games in a row. They're finally starting to get a little more traction in their game, and Calgary at this price is still not a team I'm interested in. I think New Jersey's got a chance to build a little momentum, bond together on this road trip. Maybe that's something that's happening as well, and that sometimes can spark better play on the ice from teams. So I kind of like New Jersey here. Certainly don't mind the price, plus 135. Buy low on a team that struggled out of the gate, but now they're showing signs of maybe getting out of this funk just a little bit. So I like the Devils there. That's my one underdog spot tonight. New Jersey plus 135 against Calgary. Quickly through the last two games, and then we'll get to Teddy. Columbus, Arizona. Arizona minus 150, total 5.5, shaded to the under here. I probably would lean under the total. Arizona's found a way to just grind these games down to low-scoring, tight-checking games. They're returning home. Arizona off a road trip. That's a little bit of a dubious spot. I think spot-wise it's good for Columbus, but Columbus really is having a tough time lately finding the back of the net offensively and even defensively. Their goaltending, has been maddeningly inconsistent from both Joonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins for the Jackets in net. So it's not the spot I'm looking to back Arizona in for sure. I don't argue people looking at the spot saying it's a better one for Columbus here, taking them at plus 130, but I don't like their form, and that's why I'm not going to be on Columbus there. Minnesota, San Jose. Minnesota got me the other night. I didn't see this one coming. I bet Anaheim against Minnesota the other night. I didn't think the Wild would come back from a deficit on the road in Anaheim and beat the Ducks like that, but they did. Give them credit. Third period comeback for Minnesota, down 2-1. They end up rallying to win that game 4-2. San Jose minus 145, home favorites, total 5.5 in that game. It's a pass for me. Maybe San Jose awoke from their slumber with that big, convincing, dominant win the other night against Chicago, but they got to show me they could put two of those good performances in a row together. This Sharks team, something they haven't been able to do so far this season. So when I look at this game, San Jose is this is not the price range I have any interest backing San Jose in, but I've never been a real big, strong proponent of Minnesota either. Can they win two? Yeah, exactly, Shelby Richards. Wild can't win two in a row on the road, can they? They could. Mally Mal, Blue Jackets 7-3 versus the Coyotes. Good bounce back spot. I don't argue with that. It would be a Columbus or pass spot. I think Arizona's the better team, but there's no doubt there's a better spot for Columbus. They should be hungry. They should be motivated. They catch Arizona returning home off the lengthy road trip that they've had. There's no doubt Columbus could steal that game. It's just not a team I'm comfortable backing right now, but I understand from a spot perspective tonight why it would make some sense to back Columbus there in that game tonight. Minnesota, San Jose, I'm passing on that game. I'd rather bet against those two teams than bet on them. So to me, that's a tough one to call as to who will win that game. All right, Well, we're going to hope to win some things coming up in the next 30 minutes of the show. Win some bets courtesy of some recommendations from my guest, Teddy Covers, who joins the show every single morning here on Betting with the Bag. Teddy, good to have you with us again. How are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Ian. How are you today, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's busy time of year, to say the least. I mean, this is one of those days we talked about. It's like you walk up to the buffet, doesn't matter what restaurant, there's so many food options to choose from. I want some of this, I want some of this, I want a little of that too. That's kind of like the sports bettor, what they're feeling on a day like today when you got NFL and college football and NBA and college basketball and of course NHL as well. So you got 5 sports all going tonight at once. But again, just because the buffet is there and gives you so many options doesn't mean you have to take every item of food at the buffet table, similar to the sports bettor. Just because there's all these sports and all these games and all these leagues taking place doesn't mean you have to bet every single one of them, nor should you. So be selective and try to find your value when you got these busy days like we've got today. We'll get to NBA with Teddy shortly. We've not covered the NBA slate yet. We saved that for Teddy joining the show, but we will start with football with Teddy as we always do. We've got Thursday night football, Teddy, Chargers and Raiders, flip of favorites as I mentioned earlier. Oakland was 2.5 home favorites at the open. Now the Chargers are short road favorites. Total's gone up from 47.5 to 48.5, 49. All of a sudden, as I mentioned, the primetime unders, which had been phenomenal. We've seen 3 overs now on primetime last week with San Francisco, with New England Baltimore, and with Cowboys Giants, albeit in fortuitous fashion with that one going over the total. But nevertheless, the primetime under streak coming to a halt last week, and bettors pushing this game up a little bit. This is a conflict game for me, Teddy. It's not a game I bet. It's not a game I plan on betting. I'll give Oakland credit in one regard. They're 4-4. You look at the 4 losses, Kansas City, Minnesota, Green Bay, Houston, all playoff teams. Those are the 4 teams that Oakland's lost to. So there's not a bad loss in that mix. They've been better than I thought. Their offense has been good. Derek Carr's been getting a clean pocket most weeks. Will he get a clean pocket tonight, though? Because we've got some offensive line injury concerns with Hudson and Brown for the Raiders, starting center and one of their tackles questionable for this game tonight. That could matter against what's now a healthy Charger pass rush with Ingram and Bosa now, both their bookend defensive ends looking to get after the quarterback. And if they're shorthanded on that O-line, that could be a little bit of an issue tonight for the Chargers. My point is, the Chargers were great last week against the Packers. They're finally healthier. Defense is healthier. They're going to have Derwin James back pretty soon as well. Hunter Henry, the tight end, is back. Saw what a difference he's made for Phillip Rivers. Healthier team. Big win against Green Bay. Part of me kind of thinks Green Bay was just totally not mentally locked in that game. And with a little bit flat, reading their press clippings, as Aaron Rodgers said after the game, saying we ate a piece of humble pie. I think we were starting to think we were a little too good, and we came in overconfident. So was LA's win more them, or Green Bay just not playing well and throwing a clunker out there on the field on Sunday? Good cases to be made for both of these teams, Teddy. So when I have that kind of situation, I'm passing the game, which is exactly what I'm doing. How about you with Thursday night football, Teddy, Raiders and Chargers?
Well, let's start with the buffet analogy, all right? Because there's 2 things to talk about on a day like today. Ian, you and I are jaded, okay? We're not the average sports bettor because we've been doing this full time, for decades. When it comes to like Monday Night Football, I'm like, okay, another game. When it comes to March Madness, I'm like, all right, I've seen one before. Something about this time of year where you have every sport in front of you gets me juiced, man. I absolutely get excited in November because you do have all of these options in the buffet. And I'm not going to call myself a buffet expert, okay? But my first couple years in Vegas, I was a big buffet guy. I was a single guy. And, that was my big meal of the day. I would, find a lunch buffet and go in that dead period of the afternoon, and I would eat enough for lunch and dinner. And I would go to all the buffets in town and find all the deals and all of that. The strategy for buffets in Vegas or anywhere else is real simple. Before you eat one bite, you go through that buffet and you plan what you're going to eat. All right, I'm going to have some salad first, and that steak over there looks good. Oh, don't fill up on the fried food. Oh, and save some room for this. You go through and you figure it out. It's the exact same story with a betting card like today, okay? You have to eliminate things. No, I'm not going to get the macaroni salad, whatever it is. You have to eliminate things right off the bat in order to focus on the opportunities that are in front of you. When it comes to Chargers Raiders tonight, I'm just going to put this flat out. I am not buying the LA turnaround, okay? That the Chargers, who underachieved early because they weren't very good, have suddenly figured it out over the last 2 weeks, and now they're a good team that deserves to be road chalk. This is how they won the first game. Missed field goal, and it was a Bears missed field goal, and if you remember that game, the Bears were the better team on that day, and they lost the game. We'll just leave it at that. The Packers didn't show up last week. Flat out no-show game. They said they were flat. Rodgers said they were flat. Situationally, they looked like it might be a flat spot. And all of a sudden, the Chargers are getting all this credit, back-to-back wins, for beating a flat Packers team and winning on a missed field goal. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying. And there's all of this built that we've seen. Would they go 7-1 or 6-2? 1 year was 7-1, 1 year was 6-2 over the back half of the campaign. So we've seen these Chargers with Phillip Rivers and Anthony Lynn and company have some big second halves in recent seasons. That is absolutely being priced into this line. We talk about the Raiders' offensive line injury. That's my biggest concern about Oakland for tonight. Was reading yesterday, was reading this morning. It looks pretty good for both Hudson and Brown to suit up. That's the starting center and the right tackle. And if they both suit up, Oakland's going to have their entire offensive line healthy tonight, which is something they only had for like 2 quarters so far all season. So the offensive line might be better than we think it is, and I'm not buying LA. I've got a Raiders under 6 win ticket in my pocket. I'm going to lose that bet, but I'm going to make money on it because I'm going to be betting on the Raiders. This team's a lot better than I thought they were on the opposite side of the football. Defensively, the Raiders' stats stink. Absolutely stink. Go look at who they played. From a strength of schedule standpoint, no one's faced a tougher schedule than Oakland so far. They played all of these really good offenses and really good teams and et cetera, et cetera. And even with that, they've been good against the run. It's the pass defense that struggled, and maybe the pass defense struggles tonight, but I think Oakland's the better of the 2 teams catching points. I took the Raiders plus, put them in my pocket.
All right, liking the Raiders tonight. Teddy covers against the LA Chargers. Like I say, the Oakland's losses have been to teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Those are the 4 teams they've lost to: Kansas City, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Houston. They're all going to be playoff teams. Not a bad loss in the mix for the Raiders this season. The Chargers, do they have a run in them? I know they fired Ken Wisenhunt, the Steven Steich, the new offensive. I didn't see a big difference in that offense just because of the offensive coordinator change last week from the Chargers. So Shane Steichen, that's his name. They're the new offensive coordinator for the Chargers. It still seemed like not big tweaks, not big time adjustments to the playbook from what I saw last week. They just happened to win that game, and the defense was a big part of it. And Green Bay being flat, as Teddy alluded to, might have been a big part of that. And the humble pie quote from Aaron Rodgers stands out as a clear sign that, hey, Green Bay wasn't locked in mentally to that football game to the level they should have been. So we'll see if Oakland can get the job. Yeah, I was just going to, thought I heard Teddy say something there. But yeah, Oakland for Teddy covers tonight in this game. We'll turn our attention now to college football. 2 games in terms of college football. Lafayette, Coastal Carolina. Lafayette laying 14 on the road, total 58 in this game. Coastal Carolina, a crazy game with Troy last week, coming back to beat the Trojans. That game was back and forth, a wild one in the Sun Belt. But, I think Lafayette's a better defense than Troy. Let's see if Coastal Carolina's offense can move the ball in this one. Coastal Carolina still to me is a hideous defense, one that Lafayette should score against. But, again, Coastal Carolina's a slower-paced team tempo-wise. This is one of those games where it's, in terms of the side and total, where the numbers are right now, Teddy, could make a case that for either Lafayette covering or Carolina covering, and I could probably say the same with the game going over or under. So I'm not involved in this game. You got any take on Lafayette, Carolina tonight?
I'm not involved in the game either. If I would be playing, I'd probably be laying. And it's a simple fact. Okay, Louisiana Lafayette on offense runs for 288 yards a game. Only Navy and Air Force are better. Okay. So you have one team that can and will run the football. Trey Rogers, Elijah Mitchell, been monsters. Rogers averaging 8.4 yards per carry, number 2 in all of college football. Mitchell's got 12 TDs. That leads the Sun Belt, number 8 nationally. They get in the end zone and they run the football, and they're facing a defense that does not do a good job at stopping the run. And you say what you want about the Chanticleers. This is not a team that I trust to stop the run. And if I'm going to bet against one of the elite teams in the conference, a team that does play defense in a conference that doesn't have a lot of defenses, their opponent better play defense, be able to stop what they do. I don't think Coastal Carolina can do that. So it's Raging Cajuns or pass, but the price is right. I'm not going to lay 14 on the road in a weeknight game against a pumped up opponent that's, found a way to win a wild game last week and thinks they can do it again here. So slight lean to the over. I guess if I had a free bet, I'd probably look at the over as well as the Raging Cajuns. But because I do think that La La is going to get theirs. I worry about Coastal Carolina getting theirs, and that's what's a debated side total, and I'm not involved.
All right, next game in the AAC is Temple, South Florida. We've got Temple 1.5 point road favorites, total 49.5 in this game. Look, and I know there's people in the chat that have chimed in. What's going on here? Why is this number where it is? And I understand there's fear, there's trepidation. What's going on? I don't buy into mouse traps. I don't buy into fishy lines. I don't buy into any of that nonsense and gibberish as far as I'm concerned. The way I see this game, and I said this earlier, is I trust Temple a lot more than I trust South Florida. I bashed Charlie Strong from here to Kingdom Come ever since he's been here with this South Florida team. Again, I'll recap the wins here for South Florida. Can you tell me any of these wins were good wins? South Carolina State, FCS team. UConn, bottom feeder. BYU when Wilson, the quarterback, was hurt. Oh, and they were outgained by 124 yards USF in that phony, fraudulent win over BYU. And the other win was East Carolina, another team that's had a disappointing year. Those are the wins for South Florida this year. Not a win. Let's not forget they got destroyed by Wisconsin. They got beaten by Georgia Tech, who's completely rebuilding this year. This is not a team I have any sort of confidence in, and not a team I want to back right now. Temple's been one of those teams, Teddy, that I've had a good read on, side and total. I think most of the times I've gotten involved in a Temple game, I've won this year because I took them against Georgia Tech, laying the points, they won. I took them against Memphis as an underdog. They won that game outright. I took overs in their games against SMU and Central Florida, and both of those games flew over the total. I didn't bet the side in those two games. I think tonight I'm getting back in on the side in this game and laying the 1.5 with this Temple team. I mean, you look at Temple. They faced UCF, SMU, and Memphis the last 3 weeks. Three of the best teams, three of the best offenses in the AAC. It's going to look like a slow motion paint, waiting for paint to dry offense facing South Florida compared to facing those three teams you just got through in this game. Now, I'm not the biggest Rod Carey guy from a coaching standpoint. In fact, there's a lot more coaches I would have faith and confidence in. But you give him over Charlie Strong, who I think even less of, yeah, I got no problem backing Temple here. I still don't trust the South Florida defense. I know Temple's defense has been shredded the last 3 weeks, but all against incredible offensive teams here in this AAC. I think this is the right spot here to get in on Temple. What's your take on this one?
And you're, first of all, I'm with you as a first play. I think I gave out on Monday morning on the show that I like Temple minus the point. They were minus, I think I'm at 1 or 1.5. 1.5, just like you. I didn't get the 1. If they win by 1, I'll be pissed. But they're not really available. But in that, I probably should have taken them on the money line, which is a smarter thing to do rather than lay 1.5. But I didn't. I laid 1.5 with Temple on money and talked about it. And a lot of the thought process was, look, they just played the three best teams in the conference, all of whom have explosive offenses, and then they got a week off. And the best part, you say, why is this line where it is? Okay. We can ask the same question about the Browns and the Bills or any other, I mean, there's always there's head scratching lines every week. Why was Purdue laying at Northwestern? And now people ask me, why is Northwestern laying against Purdue? I mean, there's some head scratchers, but every line is there for a reason. I can't say there are never mistakes. There are rarely mistakes. And when you see a mistake, it doesn't last till Thursday. So there's two-way action on this game at the current price because Temple's statistical profile was brilliant. And then they faced the three best offenses in the league, and SMU scored touchdowns. I think they forced one field goal in that game. They didn't force any against Central Florida. Both teams gained, well over 600 yards of offense. And Temple's pretty-looking statistical profile now looks just like South Florida's when you look at the season yard rankings and the yards per rush and the yards per rush allowed. Not a big difference between the two teams anymore. I think that's as much schedule related as any other factor. I think Temple is primed to bounce back strong off those two bad losses and a bye, and I think they are the better of these two teams, and I laid the point there and a half right with you, Ian. So we're on the same page on this one.
All right, both liking Temple. Yeah. People in the chat scared of Temple a little bit on the road. Yeah, they've had some clunkers on the road, but the Buffalo loss was a crazy flat spot, I think, for Temple a little bit. They just didn't play well that day, made mistakes, turned the ball over. It was just a absolute mishmash of mistakes for the Temple Owls.
One little thing, Ian, if I can jump in real quick, I just want to say that there's one other big issue that's in Temple's favor. South Florida, I think their quarterbacks have been sacked 29 times this season. Their protection hasn't been good. And their red zone execution is hit or miss. Temple's red zone, I mean, prior to these last two games against the explosive offenses, Temple's red zone defense has been phenomenal. And they're a team that can get after the quarterback, which is bad news against a team that has allowed sacks in bunches on several occasions this season.
To me, it's as cheap a price as I've seen all year betting against this South Florida team, so I don't mind taking advantage of that. So Teddy and I both liking Temple there. Let's go to, you know what? I've known you for a long time, Teddy. We've known each other for a long time, and I'm pretty darn sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you'd really, going back to when it was sports memo days, we're really not sure, or I'm pretty sure I should say that you don't really get involved in college basketball until Thanksgiving and beyond. So is it okay if we skip that?
Yeah, there's not much college hoops. I mean, there's a really short card in college hoops today. And again, yesterday I gave 4 teams right off the bat that are bet on. I gave 3 bet against. It was Michigan, Auburn, and Nebraska, and 1 bet on, which was South Florida. And that's my initial take in college hoops right now. And there were a couple more that I got yesterday, but I'm going to hold off on those for a day or two. We'll get to them. Don't worry. But yes, you're absolutely right, Ian. As it went that Thanksgiving weekend and the post, I mean, honestly, my favorite time for Ben, that's why I get into it every year. After those Thanksgiving tournaments where everybody looks great, everybody looks awful, and the markets overreact to everything, there's a lot of money to be made on the fade from teams that look great over Thanksgiving and teams that looked awful over Thanksgiving, and the markets just totally overreact to all of that crap. And that's why I love betting post-Thanksgiving basketball, and that's why I wait until after. There's just, with the big buffet that we're offered, there's only so many hours a day, and I just cannot do what I need to do to be confident in college hoops to pepper the board with wagers at this time of the year. I give it a couple of weeks.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. Matt Randall, again, his taint play of the day in college hoops. Winthrop -1. It's up to 3.5. Great closing line value. That's half the battle right there. You beat the closing line, and you're doing something right. And Matt Randall looks like he's going to do that with that Winthrop play against Hartford in college hoops tonight. All right, so we'll turn our attention with Teddy to the NBA. Again, we have not hit the NBA yet on the show. We'll get to this NBA card now. Right at this point in time. Just a light card tonight on the NBA schedule. That's usually the case when we're talking games on Thursday nights throughout the course of the season. So we'll start with Boston taking on Charlotte. We've got the Celtics laying 7.5 on the road and taking money as well. Total 215, 215.5. What a bizarre game. I was doing in-game live Tuesday night, and on that show, Charlotte and Indiana were playing at the time. And I think I saw it was 24-4 for Charlotte in the fourth quarter at one point in that game. It was absolutely crazy. The Pacers had a huge lead. They blew it, and the game ended up going to overtime. Crazy basketball game. Now Charlotte having a rebound from that, play this Celtics team. It looks like they're starting to get some consistent play together themselves. Boston laying 7.5, 215 the total. Teddy, what's your take on this one?
I'm not even close to getting involved in this. I bet against Charlotte the other night and was feeling good about the game. And we, in fact, I think Jimmy and I were on the opposite sides of that ball game. And I watched that fourth quarter pretty close. And a couple of weird things happened with Charlotte in that contest. I mean, the weirdest thing was that a lineup that Borrego had never used before, that he wasn't planning on using, caught fire, and he left them in the game for the entire fourth quarter and overtime. And Graham sets a career high. Biombo sparks the crowd and sparks the team. I mean, Biombo sparked that rally and plays on both ends of the floor. It's a Charlotte team that in many ways has overachieved early on. All that said, the Pacers took the punch and punched back, and they punched back. They got good shots. They were able to get good looks. Brogdon was able to break down the defense a couple of times. They were wide open threes that Indiana had to allow that game to go into overtime and be as tight as it was. And of course, the free throw disparity, 42-7 in favor of Charlotte. I'm not going to say that the game was officiated oddly, but one team was getting calls and one team wasn't, and that doesn't happen night in, night out necessarily. I don't know that Charlotte can do that again, okay? And I worry about their defensive acumen right now, most assuredly, but they've overachieved, and they've shown some prowess on this court. Boston is still, I thought the Celtics would be a little bit better coming into the season than they are, and especially on the defensive end of the court. They've been a little bit spotty early on, and that makes me reluctant to lay this type of a price with Boston and it getting steamed up. I know they're the better team. I don't think Charlotte can do what they did again, but the price isn't right. The slightest of leans to the over, but again, I don't know that Charlotte's going to be able to do what they did offensively the other night. It was one of those things where they caught fire and they caught lightning in a bottle, and I don't think the team is built to do that on a night in, night out basis. So slight lean over, no lean side.
All right, next game, Oklahoma City, San Antonio. We've got San Antonio laying 4.5 at home, 211 the total. Spurs, I remember, started the season undefeated. Well, they've come back down to earth a little bit since then, now hosting the Thunder. Teddy, what's your thoughts on OKC and San Antonio?
The Spurs have 1 point. Yeah, they're 4-3. Yeah, they're 4-3, but they only have 1 point spread cover. They've been overvalued from day one. Back-to-back losses for San Antonio. And the quotes from the local papers this morning were all about DeRozan talking, we got to play defense. All just talking, our defense isn't there. The offense will come and go, but the defense has to be our, what we will hang our hat on, et cetera, et cetera. OKC's not built. That offense isn't ready for good defenses. Their defense is great. They're number 3 in the NBA. They did a number on Orlando the other night. Shut down the Magic in that ball game. Very impressive. We've seen a big move on this under. I put some under 214 in my pocket last night. It's 211 right now. I still lean under. I didn't give it to the clients. We lost the best of the number. But that's one that I put in my pocket personally. And I wouldn't argue with anyone betting this game under. We have both teams talking defense. We have an OKC offense that isn't built to move the basket. They're not going to do well against good defensive teams this year. Or certainly not right now. The Thunder are a work in progress in that regard. And San Antonio is not a good offensive team right now either. So put all those factors together. I like the under. I bet the under, but of course the number is gone if you're betting it now. You're taking that risk that those 3.5 points between last night and this morning end up mattering.
All right, Miami and Phoenix. The Phoenix Suns, what a story they've been to start the season. Phoenix 1 point home favorites, total 218. Miami, we usually like Miami as road dogs. Well, they got run over as road dogs the other night by the Denver Nuggets. Now they'll look to bounce back against Phoenix. This Phoenix team just really, really impressive. I don't know if this can go on indefinitely, but you can't help but be extremely impressed with what you've seen from the Phoenix Suns. What do you think of this game, Teddy? And Phoenix overall, one of the incredible stories early in the first month of this season.
I'm mad at myself because I haven't made money off the Suns, and I saw it on opening night, and then I didn't play them the next game against the Jazz, and then Ayton got hurt, and I got scared off, and then I've found ways to talk myself out of Suns bets on multiple occasions. I'm not surprised. No, I'm not surprised by Phoenix. This is an organization when you and there may well be value, just as much value moving forward with them, but this point spread is telling me maybe not. Phoenix is as hot as any team in the NBA betting markets right now, and that tells me maybe you let them cool off a little bit before you try to get involved, especially because you missed this incredible run to open up the season. But when you have a bottom feeder franchise, and the Suns have been bottom feeders, okay, bad organization, bad personnel decisions, bad management, bad coaching, and then all of a sudden a couple of things fall into place. You find a coach who bonds with the players and they're buying into what he's saying. You get some veterans on the team. You find a point guard, Rubio. You ask me what's the Suns? You saw it in game 1, Rubio. You have a point guard who's not interested in scoring, but is interested in finding his teammates. I thought that the loss of Booker might be really huge, and the loss of Booker actually helps this team because now Booker was holding on to the basketball a little bit too much. They're playing defense. They're buying into Monty Williams. They're bet on it. So I'm not surprised. I'm not, oh my God, Phoenix. But the whole point is that when you have a bottom feeder that gets better, that gets respectable, there's a ton of money to be made with those type of teams, like the Raiders in the NFL, perhaps. bottom feeders. Maybe this year they're respectable. Those are bet on teams. And Phoenix, from bottom feeder to respectability, that might, there's two great profit areas. That's from bottom feeder respectability, and then from respectability to elite. And when the teams make that jump like Milwaukee did last year, you make a bunch of money with those type of teams. Phoenix is that type of team. They're one way for me. I'm not stepping in front of them. But Miami off the no-show loss, and Miami may well be the better team, makes me a little bit reluctant to back Phoenix here, especially, again, because I haven't made the money that I should have made with the Suns over the first few weeks of the campaign. Pass.
All right. Pass for Teddy and Miami Phoenix. Final game on this NBA slate, Portland Trailblazers, LA Clippers. Clippers in back-to-back mode after the Bucks game last night. Another national TV game for tonight. And this one, Kawhi will be in the lineup. I know Doris Burke's quote about it being ridiculous that Kawhi and load management's already an issue this early in the season got a lot of play and a lot of media coverage yesterday. Clippers 5.5-point home favorites, total 230, 230.5 in this game. Very intriguing Western Conference matchup here, Teddy. What do you like with the Blazers and Clippers?
Yeah, I'm not amused by the announcers and the Twitter and everyone going off on the players. You know what? Dude won a title. He brought a title to Toronto, okay? To Toronto, all right?
And he did it because he was fresh for the playoffs, yep.
What's that?
And he did it because he was fresh for the playoffs from resting so much in the regular season. Had that extra energy.
Yeah, sorry that it's happening on your national TV games. Guess what? Don't schedule your frickin' teams on back-to-backs for your national TV games, and you won't have this problem. From a betting standpoint, I don't know what to do with it. I'm starting to think that Portland stinks, maybe, but maybe it's a little bit too early to think that. But I shouldn't say stinks, but because with Lillard and with McCollum, they have scores. They're gonna the backcourt scoring is there. Their front court play has been abysmal. And with they lost 3 out of 4 since Collins got hurt. And obviously they're still waiting for Nurkic to get healthy. And somebody else out in their front court too. I mean, it's been a real problem for them. They're getting out rebounded every game, and they're not able to get low post stops. They're not the rim protection hasn't been there for the Blazers. So they're not a team I'm in a rush to get to the window with right now. Even off that bad loss to Golden State, which in theory is supposed to be a bet on spot for a team like Portland. The Clips situation off of this back-to-back versus the last time when they were up in Utah and they returned home is different because last night they fought right down to the wire in that ball game, and ended up it was a 2-point game in the final minute before we saw the Bucks hit some free throws, although not that final free throw to have them win by 6, so it ends up landing right in the middle. But the fact that they gave, the loss in Utah, then they came home the next day, and I forget who they blew out, but they blew someone out the next game and won and covered with relative ease. They hadn't pushed themselves to the limit in Utah the previous night. The bench was in play the whole time in the fourth quarter, and that was not the case last night for the Clips. So I think they may not have the same energy on the second of back-to-backs they had last time because they pushed it last night. So hard game for me. The Clips may well be a lot better than Portland, and I continue to be impressed with LA night in, night out. But the only bet I made tonight, the only actual wager that I've made was on that under in the Spurs Thunder game. And again, that total has already been bet down a fair bit since I made that wager.
All right, I feel like in the chat now with about 10 minutes to go before we wrap up the show. Questions time. Come one, come all. If you've got questions for Teddy for anything NFL or college football this weekend, now's the time to post them in the chat, and I'll send them Teddy's way for the last 10 minutes of the show. Before that, Teddy, obviously day in, day out with Jimmy, you're mentioning what plays you've made in college football and NFL, and you're adding day by day between yesterday's appearance on this show and this morning, Teddy, any additions that you've made in NFL or college football.
So yesterday I said that right after the show I was going to make 2 bets, and I made them right after the show. I bet Minnesota, the Gophers, +7. I bet LSU +6.5. I also put Iowa, the Hawkeyes, into my pocket at +9.5. I don't think we're going to find +10s in that game. I was kind of hoping and waiting, and I decided to stop hoping and waiting and make it a bet. 193, Iowa +9.5. And my thought process in that one is twofold. these two teams are tied in the standings right now. And I understand that Wisconsin came in with a whole lot more hype and a much better start to the season and all of that than Iowa did. But the road to the Big Ten championship game is just as open for Iowa as it is for Wisconsin. And for me, it comes down to one fundamental factor. Iowa's defensive line, can they stop Jonathan Taylor? Because if they can stop Jonathan Taylor, Jack Cohn's not going to pass the Badgers to a double-digit victory over the Hawkeyes. I don't see it. I think Iowa's defense is capable of doing that. I don't see, their numbers have been good all year. I haven't seen anyone run the football successfully against Iowa for extended stretches this season. Boy, the quotes out of that locker room, reading the local papers, the quotes were, we like matchups like this. We think we'll be successful. And that was the senior leaders on defense. I think the Hawkeyes are live. Plus 9.5 is in my pocket.
All right, Iowa Hawkeyes against the Wisconsin Badgers plus the points. All right, we got some questions starting to roll in the chat right now. Let me just double check on what we got. Thoughts on the Cowboys under. Now, there's Oklahoma State Cowboys. There's Dallas Cowboys. That's Oklahoma State Cowboys is what I'm going to assume. Teddy, Oklahoma State under. Any thoughts there?
Well, I was going to assume the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh,
that's okay. At this time of year, especially when you're like in college and whatever it is,
you got to put team names
and
city names there. You got to, yeah.
yeah. Well, it happen all the time. Someone texted me, it was with the whole thing with Kawhi's injury. I got info the night before. And he's like, take LA. Someone sent me I got the text from my buddy. I'm like, what sport, dude? Take LA, thanks. Doesn't do you any good at this time of year. Look, the Oklahoma State Cowboys are a team I haven't gotten right all year, flat out. Haven't gotten them right. I think of them as an over team in general, but it's not when it's November and this is a team. Okay, but I was wrong here. I was wrong there. I was wrong there. Those aren't teams that I'm really going to be focused in on and locked in on at this time of year. I'm just not. I'm looking to when it comes to November college football, the teams that you had the good reads on. You were just talking about you had a good read on Temple all year. Those are the teams you're looking to back. The teams you're like, yeah, I lost betting on them here, and then I lost betting against them there. Those are the teams you're like, all right. And for me, there's a fair bit in the Big 12 like that, unfortunately. That has not been my best conference this year, and that is not a game that I put a lot of time into.
All right, Washington State versus Cal. That's the Cougars and the Golden Bears, Teddy. What do you think of that one?
So I'm still not convinced that Cal's capable of scoring against anyone. Their quarterback situation hasn't gotten better. Their offensive line situation hasn't gotten better. Their skill position talent, their dearth of skill position talent hasn't changed even a little bit. That's a rough offense right now. And for as good as they are defensively, they've been wearing down. So I guess if I'm playing, I'm laying. It's Cougs or pass for me. And that's really the only way I would look in that game. Cal's defense has had some success against Washington State in the past. Maybe the under would be there to look, but not with this total, man. Cal totals, the markets aren't sleeping on Cal totals anymore. Not a game I'm going to get involved with. Good luck if you do. I know I don't want Cal.
Notre Dame -8 against Duke. I'm way more interested in Duke now, based on where the number is at this point in time. I cashed a ticket with Virginia Tech last week, plus 17.5. I didn't expect Notre Dame to bring an A game or anything close. Second loss of the season, officially out of the playoffs, not playing for any division or conference titles because they're an independent. What's there left to shoot for? What's there to get pumped up for? And they just barely escaped by the skin of their teeth straight up, let alone not even coming close to the point spread cover last week against Virginia Tech. Now that this number's 8, I'm interested in Duke. What about you, Teddy? Your thoughts, Notre Dame Duke?
I've gone back and forth on it. By the way, we have a line now on the Chiefs. That's going up across the board. Kansas City, 5.5/6, total 48 against Tennessee. That number's just popping up. If you can look at your SBR live odds page and watch them pop up. And now I got distracted, which Notre Dame Duke. So my first lean was the Irish are cheap at 6, and they were cheap. That's why the line moved up to 8. That they were too cheap, and then and the thought process was one: there's respect for Notre Dame, but there was also some disrespect for Duke in there, and Duke's ability to step up in class against the most athletic teams that they face. And the ACC this year, you can put a lot of these teams in a bag and shake it up, and from a powering standpoint, it's amazing how tight this conference is, where there's not a huge difference between your Boston College, your North Carolina, even your Virginia is supposed to be good, and your Virginia Tech who's not supposed to be good, and on, and on down the line. There's a lot of teams that are really bunched up, and Duke, of course, in that range as well. And this is a step up in class game, and I haven't been impressed with Duke's ability to step up in class. So my initial lean was towards the Irish, and then you really start looking at Notre Dame and you're like, is this a team we want to be laying more than a touchdown with on the road with the bubble burst? And I mean, Virginia Tech had a third string quarterback last week, and they've, it wasn't for a couple of calls, a couple of, real dicey calls, Virginia Tech probably wins that game, So, and then the bad loss to Michigan, and it's like, can Notre Dame bounce back and win by margin? So I got back and forth. I'm not going to get involved.
All right. And someone asked quickly about Temple, South Florida, the total in that game, over or under. You got any lean in that direction, Teddy?
Well, I'll tell you what. Give me just 1 second here. The markets and the sharp money is no. That's the other game. The sharp money was really leaning over in the Lafayette game. For what it's worth, the sharp money absolutely likes over in Lafayette, Coastal Carolina. I don't have a strong take. I guess if the Temple side is not a side that correlates with a lot of overs. Okay. So there's at least some modest correlation between Temple and under in this game. If USF gets in the 30s, Temple's not winning and covering. I trust the Owls defense. I trust their red zone defense. I trust their ability to get after the quarterback. So I guess I lean under, but it's not something I bet.
All right, lean under, but not something you got involved with. All right, good stuff. NFL, college football, I'm a little undecided. I'm up in the air still with a lot in college football, so I'm gonna refrain from giving out what I'm on for sure right now. I will be on Charlotte UTEP over for sure. I've been riding these Charlotte overs, and Kyle Oxley back at quarterback at least gives UTEP some semblance of an offense against a bottom tier defense. So that's one we've definitely got locked in, but we've got lots up in the air. Right now, NFL-wise for this weekend, I can tell you right now, I'm definitely going to look at Buffalo +3 against Cleveland right now. I know Buffalo on the road can still be a little shaky to trust them, but Cleveland has that look and feel of a team that's just falling apart all around them right now. I'm going to give, I think, Cincinnati a hard look, believe it or not. +10 against Baltimore. A.J. Green back. I mean, Ryan Finley, say what you want. It's not like Andy Dalton was lighting it up for that team, and it's a dubious spot for Baltimore off the huge win against New England. So I'm kind of interested there. Seattle, San Francisco. Kind of looking at San Fran maybe in that game, but I'm not so sure yet. But that's the NFL for me as of right now. Again, it'll be a lighter NFL card for me at this point in time. So that's that. Teddy, we're getting the hook, unfortunately. That by the way, before we wrap up, I want to throw out my CFL out there because this is my only time on this show. I'm locked in with the CFL division semifinals already. I'm on Montreal money line against Edmonton. I really like that one quite a bit. Edmonton has one win against a playoff team this year, and that was against Montreal in week 1 right after they fired Mike Sherman. It was chaos for the Alouettes going into that season opener. That's the one win out of 8 wins for Edmonton this year. Only win where they've beaten a playoff team. All their other wins were against BC, Toronto, and Ottawa, the bottom feeders in the CFL. I think Montreal wins that game. I think it goes over the total as well. And I like Winnipeg +6 against Calgary. What's Calgary's point spread record this year, ATS, when laying 5 points or more? 0-for. How about 0-6-1 against the spread, laying 5 or more? Calgary. Every game against Winnipeg's been down to the wire, close games decided by 4 points or less. I think the playoff game Sunday will be more of the same. Give me Winnipeg +6 against Calgary. Zach Collaros against Bo Levi Mitchell should be one hell of a quarterback matchup in that game. Teddy, we got to wrap it up. Thanks as always for joining me on the show today and every day here on Betting with the Bag. You can find Teddy on Twitter at Teddy_covers. Teddy, good stuff as always, my friend. Have a great night and good luck with your wagers.
Hey, thanks so much, Ian. Good luck to you as well. And for what it's worth, I've got 2 CFL sources. You're one. My other CFL source also likes Montreal. They like them a lot.
All right, good stuff. So Montreal and Winnipeg. I'm on Montreal money line, not laying the 1.5, and I like Winnipeg +6. I like the over as well in that Montreal game. In fact, even the Winnipeg-Calgary game might slide over. A lot of those totals in the high 40s in the CFL, they're finding their way over the total late in the season. Could be more of the same. The only concern is it's cold, and there could be some weather issues in Calgary for that game on Sunday, so I'll have to check into that. Teddy, good stuff as always. Great show. Thanks to everyone in the chat for tuning in. I keep answering a lot of your questions, but we're totally out of time. Thanks again for everyone for tuning in. Thanks to Teddy for joining me on the show. Jimmy the Bag will be back in this chair for the late show, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time later today. Thanks to everyone for watching, and good luck with your wagers. Have a great Thursday night. And as always, leche and los bookmakers.